Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, and the text is yeah, it's fine. Everyone can hear me? Yes. हाँ? नहीं ठीक है. या थोड़ी सी echo है, चलेगा. चलेगा. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 8. Text 5. Everyone has a copy. So, Antakale cha mameva smaran mukta kalevaram yaha parayati samadbhavam yate nastyatra shamshaya. Word to word, Antakale, at the end of life, cha, also, mam, me, eva, certainly, smarana, remembering, muktava, quitting, kalevaram, the body, yaha, he who, prayati, goes, saha, he, mat bhavam, my nature, yati, achieves. Na, not, asti, there is, atra, here, samshaya, doubt. Translation: and whoever at the time of his life quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Please repeat after me. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Purport: in this verse, the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. Anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the purest of the pure. Therefore, anyone who is constantly Krishna conscious is also purest of the pure. The word smaran, remembering, is important. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. Therefore, one should practice Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of life. If one wants to achieve success at the end of his life, the process of remembering Krishna is essential. Therefore, one should constantly, incessantly chant the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya has advised that one be as tolerant as a tree, taror eva sahishvana. There may be so many impediments for a person who's chanting Hare Krishna. Nonetheless, tolerating all these impediments, one should continue to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that at the end of one's life, one can have the full benefit of Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gyananjanashlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manoabhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyaham Shri Guruho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminite Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Paricharane Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschachata Deshatarane He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhove Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Ram Antakale Chamameva Smarana Mukta Kalevaram Yaha Paryati Samadbhavam Yati Nasyatra Samshaya. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So this 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, 8 out of the 18, falls under the middle section, middle chapters, chapter 7 to chapter 12. And this section, as we all know, is called bhakti-yoga. The first one karma yoga and the end one is jnana yoga. At the end of chapter 7, the last text of chapter 7, which is called Knowledge of the Absolute, Lord Krishna told Sri Arjun, he said, those in full consciousness of me, who knows me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when at the time of death. So this, even at the time of death, Lord Krishna told Arjun that even at the time of death, who knows Krishna can basically attain the perfection. So here, when the chapter 8 starts, Arjuna asks Lord Krishna many questions. First, text 1 and text 2, he asks what is Brahman, what is the self, what is fruitive activities, what is the material manifestation, what are the demigods, etc. And he says, who is the Lord of the sacrifices, how does he live in the body, and how, and then on text 2 of chapter 8, Arjuna asks, and how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So now, in text 5, Lord Krishna he answers that particular question. Text 3 and 4, Lord Krishna answers other questions, first 6 questions, and the 7th question, Arjuna asks, Lord Krishna answers that, how can anyone at the time of death know the Lord, the Supreme Lord? And text 5, 6 and 7, and from now for next 13, 14 texts, Krishna will explain how to remember him. Especially text 5, 6 and 7, it is called remembering Krishna. And later, the later text, how to remember Krishna. Or the process, I should say. The process of remembering Krishna. And this chapter 8 it mainly deals with is bhakti, pure devotional service, as well as yoga mishra bhakti, ashtang yoga, mixed with bhakti yoga. But here, ant kale cha mamev smarana mukta kalevram. And Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning of his purport, first line of his purport, he says, in this verse, the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. And this antakale, at the end of one's life, the real test, everyone, all of us in our life, has to encounter many examinations, real tests. Many tests come in our life, and we passed many, we failed some, but in Krishna consciousness, we normally, with the guidance of a guru, guidance of high authorities, we tend to pass most, if not all, the tests. But the real test, every one of us will face sooner or later, is the final test of life, and that is at the time of death, antakale. And the purpose in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, also explains the purpose of life is to remember the Supreme Lord. Ante Narayana Smriti. So at the end of one's life, one should remember Lord Krishna. And here, Lord Krishna himself saying, those who at the end of his life, one quits, if one remembers me alone, he says, Antakale cha mam eva, me alone and no one else. That is stressed here. And Srila Prabhupada also says the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. Sometimes it can be difficult to, or one may think it can be difficult to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. Whether that end is near or whether that end is at far. I remember one devotee once in Mayapur, this is going back a few years now, he was saying they were swimming, they went to the Ganga and they dived off the boat, and unfortunately there was a shallow water in that place, and he dived and hit the head first on the riverbed, and he was kind of a bit knocked out and a bit stuck, and he could see, and this devotee has been practicing Krishna consciousness for some time, for many years, but at that particular moment of life, when he thought the end was near, and the last thing he thought of was Krishna. He could not remember Lord Krishna at that time, and he was just telling us in his class how difficult it can be to remember the Lord at the time of death. One may think that no problem, not an issue, I can do. My aim is just to remember the Lord at the time of death. And what I can do without any practice, without any preparation. There's a nice story I heard also, whether it's fictional or fiction or is it truth, I don't know, but it portrays the point. There's one wealthy man from Delhi. He at once heard in one of the lectures or kathas that whoever dies in Vrindavan attains liberation. So he was so busy in his life. He used to give a lot of donations, and he used to did many pious activities and give a lot of charity. He helped the poor. So he was very charitable. So when he heard at one of these lectures that whoever dies in Vrindavan attains liberation, so he told his secretary, and he wrote in his will also, he told his secretary especially, when the time comes, take me to Vrindavan. So the the inevitable time came, many, many, many years later, and he fell ill. And his secretary immediately brought him to Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, his health had deteriorated, he was in coma, etc. And his sons, who were abroad at that time, when they learned that he is such a state, they came from abroad, came to Vrindavan, took him to Delhi, to a hospital, where he died. So, it's not as easy one should plan as he was rightly planning, but he did not prepare himself to stay in Vrindavan. Similarly, it can be difficult if we don't have the assistance, if we don't have the guidance as how to prepare oneself. And Lord Krishna himself is talking about in text 7 here, same chapter, 8:7. And the key word is preparation, key word is practice. Unless and until one practices Krishna consciousness, unless and until one practices remembering Krishna, it can be difficult to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. And Krishna is stressing that point here in text 7, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yuddhacha. He says, remember me and fight. He is not just saying fight, but remember Krishna constantly. And then how? In text 8 also, text 7 and text 8, abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa nanya anya gamina. He says, abhyasena. Again the word abhyas, it comes. By practice, abhyasa yoga. So by practice, one who meditates on the Supreme Lord constantly engages in remembering Krishna. So abhyas, the practice is there. And text 10, again, because these verses are dealing with Lord Krishna's, in these verses, telling us how to remember Him. And in these verses, and now we look at text 10, Prayanakale manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balaina chaiva. So, with the strength of yoga, strength of one's devotional service, the strength of one's Krishna consciousness, at the end, one can remember Krishna. So, the key word here is practice. Unless and until one practices remembering Krishna through His name, through His form, through His pastimes, through His qualities. And that's why, right when the middle chapters of Bhagavad-Gita, the bhakti-yoga chapters, beginning from text 1 and chapter 7, Lord Krishna tells, Tat Shranu, hear, Arjun. He says, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full. So hearing, and this Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So this process of Krishna consciousness begins by hearing. And Krishna here is telling Arjuna to hear. Hear about, Lord Krishna starts initially to speak himself in chapter 4. But he's a bit hesitant when he talks about, gives introduction about himself. But chapter 7 onwards, he doesn't hesitate so much. He just gives more details about him. And then chapter 11, he reveals his universal form. So, by hearing about Krishna, by reading about Krishna, by hearing his pastimes, one can practice Krishna consciousness. By hearing and reading and understanding and implementing Lord Krishna's teachings as given in Bhagavad-Gita, or hearing about Lord Krishna's pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures, one can constantly remember and meditate on Krishna's pastimes. That will inevitably help all of us remembering Krishna and therefore passing the ultimate test in all of our lives. That is the ultimate test. And then Prabhupada says in his purport, the Lord is the purest of the pure, and anyone who is in touch with the pure also becomes pure. The word smaran is important. And smaran antakale chamamev smarana mukta kalevaram. Smaran, remembering Krishna alone and no one else. This can be misinterpreted. Those who don't fully understand the process of Krishna consciousness. Because Bhagavad-Gita, in Bhagavad-Gita, it has something for everyone, whether one is a Jnana Yogi, Dhyana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Ashtanga Yogi, whether it's Bhakta or whatever. Bhagavad-Gita is giving something for everyone until Lord Krishna gives his conclusions. There was one kind of a joke I heard some time back, comparing a Muslim, a Christian, and a Hindu in terms of remembering. I just remembered this. Why remembering the right personality at the right time is very important. And here we're looking at, with Krishna's telling us, remembering him alone, no one else. Unlike later on, chapter 9, Lord Krishna talked about Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. He talks about other individuals. But here he's saying remembering him alone. So this particular kind of joke I heard was, there was once a Muslim, a Christian, and a Hindu were traveling. I mean, I'll shorten it down briefly, I'll summarize it very briefly now. So they were traveling from one place to another on a ship, and they become friends, and because the journey was about a month, and on the way, storm comes, lightning is there, rain is there, and at one point the captain says, abandon ship, and everyone abandons, but only 3 are left, the Muslim, the Hindu, and the Christian. So, and the ship is sinking slowly. So, and they start praying. They all start praying. After some time of prayer, they don't see any help, and the ship is slowly sinking. And after some time, they see a small island, ray of hope. And then the Christian, he prays. He says, I'm going. I can swim. He prays to Jesus. He prays and he tells Jesus he's kind of been his devotee all his life. He's done so much charity work, preached, has been preaching and blah, blah, blah. He gives a whole life history. At the end of being a good Christian, and at the end he prays to Christ, please save me. He jumps overboard, he swims, and he's safe. Then comes the Muslim. Again the Muslim prays to Allah, and he gives all the good deeds he's done in his life, 10% of charity, praying 5 times, gone to Kaaba, Mecca, etc. And then he dives overboard, jumps, dives overboard, swims, and is safe. When he comes to the Hindu, he prays, he dives overboard, he swims, but he drowns and he dies. So, he finds himself in front of a Yamaraj. Before Yamaraj asks Chitragupta, before pronouncing the sentence, he asks Chitragupta, get his records out, and then we'll pronounce the sentence. So, but he asks this Hindu, he said, do you have any questions? So he says, yes, I do. How come the other prayed and they remembered the Lord? They were saved. But when I remembered my Lord, I drowned. So Yamaraj, he chuckles, he laughs a bit, and he says, remembering, yes, remembering is the key, especially at the time of death, because they were all facing death at that time. So he said, The Christian rightly remembered Jesus, totally, and focused his mind on Jesus, and he was saved by Jesus. The Muslim rightly, totally fixed his mind on Allah, and he was saved by Allah. He said, but when you started remembering, first you totally and utterly remembered Lord Ram. He was coming and saving you. But then you started praying to Durga Devi. Then you started remembering Durga Devi. Lord Ram went away, Durga Devi was coming, then you started praying to Brahma. Then Brahma came, she went away this way. You did not remember one personality, you're remembering multiple personalities. So they were coming and saving you, but in meanwhile, you drowned. So here, Mameva, Krishna says, remember me alone. And what normally happens, well, I don't know, but at the time of death, as we read, we hear, and sometimes we see our friends or relatives when dying, and we see so many documentaries also, it's very difficult to remember anything. And that's why King Kulashekar, he prays that let him die when he's healthy. Let him die when his mind is intact, when he's healthy and he's able to remember the Lord Krishna. Because when one dies at the time, fortunate are those who die in a healthy state of mind or healthy consciousness. But many, unfortunately, especially those who are not practicing any type of spirituality, but especially in Krishna consciousness, in devotees in ISKCON, we've seen many, many examples. Devotees dying or leaving their body in such a perfect situation. And it's it becomes easier in ISKCON, in Krishna consciousness. One has guidance of the Guru, Siksha Guru, Diksha Guru, senior disciples, our friends who are with us, and especially at the time when somebody is passing away, leaving the body, because we all know the importance of remembering the Lord at the time of death, leaving our body. Everyone chips in, everyone helps to make sure that devotee who's leaving lives in the right consciousness and the right way. That's why we are so fortunate to be in Krishna consciousness, to understand the process of leaving body and moving on, as explained by Srila Prabhupada and in ISKCON. But unfortunately, many individuals, they're not so fortunate. They die, they leave their body in such an unhealthy state. And Bhagavatam and King Kulashekar also talks about it. At the time of death, the bile, the mucus, the senses, the organs, they all fail. And one is in such a painful situation. One can be in such a painful situation. It's described 1,000 scorpions are biting you. It's such a painful situation one can suffer. Not everyone suffer, but generally they can suffer. And then who's there to help you? No one's chanting, those who are not in practicing any spirituality, who's there going to help you? They may be with you, the family members with you, support whatever they can. But sometimes when the individual is such a painful situation, the doctors have to inject morphine into the body. And one of the side effects of morphine is one forgets one's memory. So one forgets. So what can one remember at the time of dying? So how fortunate it is to be in Vrindavan, where naturally, even one if does nothing, one remembers Krishna. We're in the land of Krishna. And just by staying here, one automatically can remember the Supreme Personality, Godhead. Remembering, and then Lord Krishna says, Ya prayati samad bhavam, attains my nature. So somebody asked a question, I think, to Prabhupada, if I remember Krishna, will I become Krishna? Right? Because it says, because next verse says, Yam yam vapi smaranam bhavam tajante kalevram tam tam eveti konteya sada tad bhav bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, or son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So somebody asked Prabhupada, if I remember Krishna at the time of death, so I'll become Krishna, because that's what this is saying. Prabhupada said, no. Krishna is saying, mad bhavam, attains my nature. And that nature is of Sat, Chit and Anand. That means one actually attains one's original form of spiritual body. And at the time of death, it is the other thing also, it is said that Prabhupada explains extremely well in his lectures and books that at the time of death, one normally sees one's life go past, just like a film. From the childhood, earliest memories, to the current, all that has happened to one actually sees that, just like a film, you're watching a film. And the mind, whatever mind focuses upon, it is that particular remembrance, that state is carried to the next life. I remember my younger brother, he was telling me once, he was eating something, this is going back about 10 years ago, he was eating something, and he was just beginning to come into Krishna consciousness at that time. I mean, he used to go to temples, etc., but started to practice Krishna consciousness at that time. And what really made him practice or take it more seriously, this one incident that happened to him, is that he was eating at one time something and that got stuck in his throat. And he was he could not breathe. He became breathless. He turned blue. And then he literally saw all his life in front of him. As the books say, everything came in front of him. And he was becoming breathless. He thought he was going to go. Suddenly, his wife came and slapped him at the back of and then what was stuck, they came out. But just a few days earlier, he has read that in one of the books Prabhupada explaining. And that happened to him. It was wrong. It's not the best way to find out or realize what the scriptures say, but from that point onwards, it became kind of very serious. So it can be difficult, and Prabhupada says that. Where we go? He says it is. Prabhupada talks about the process of remembering sometimes is not easy. If one wants to achieve, I'm just trying to find that particular word here. Here we go. There may be so many impediments for a person who's chanting Hare Krishna. So many impediments are there. In so many impediments of following the process of Krishna consciousness, the process of chanting. And the biggest impediment, as we all know, is the mind. Right? There are many other impediments. Politics, name, fame, adoration, gossip, criticism, 10 offenses of chanting the holy name. So many impediments are there. And biggest is the mind. And Arjuna himself accepts. And so Krishna himself accepts that. When the 6th chapter, when Arjuna says, Chanchalam hi manha Krishna pramati balvadridam tasya ham nigram manhe vairu iva sudushkaram. He says, the mind is obstinate, flickering, very strong. It's very easy for me to control the direction of the wind and to control the mind. And immediately Krishna says, yes. Krishna says, I agree. Asham chahi mahabhav manodu nigraham chalam. Yes, it's very difficult to control the turbulent mind. But abhyasena tu konteya vairagyam che grihate. It is possible by constant practice. It's not just a practice, but there's two things go side by side. Abhyas and vairagya. practice of the right thing and rejection of the wrong thing. Abhyas and Vairagya. So those has to be done kind of simultaneously. Yes, one can say one just concentrates on practice and automatically the negative things will go away. Yes, that will happen because the process of devotional service is self-purifying. It purifies our bad qualities because Prabhupada is saying Krishna is the supreme, purest of the pure. If one in touch with the pure, then one also becomes pure automatically. So there are many impediments. And this process should begin as early as possible. It's never too late. It all depends on one's sincerity, one's desire, and how eager we are to reach, to attain our goal of life. Biggest impediment is mind, and also and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has actually given us a formula we all know. We recite that every morning. Tirunadapi Shunichena Tarorapi Sahishana Amani Namanadena Kirtanya Sadhari. How we can remember and chant the glories of the Lord constantly. Amani Namanadena Tarorapi Sahishana Tirunadapi Shunichena. Those 3 or 4 things is easily understood, easily read, easily understood, but sometimes difficult to implement. But that implementation, practice makes perfect, as the saying in English. So the more one practices, the more one becomes perfect at our goal, at attainment of our goal. So it is a practice. And it is also said that if by chance one doesn't attain one's goal, but if one has been practicing all one's life, and if one is sincere at the process of attaining Krishna, then that shortcoming, yog shemam vaham meham, Krishna promises, he carries what devotees lack, so he'll carry the devotee, he'll help the devotee. A question may be asked. I think one question was asked to Srila Prabhupada: what if one who is sinful all his life, if he or she remembers Krishna at the end of one's life, his or her life, can he or she attain Krishna? And Prabhupada said yes. That is possible, but then the question continues. But that's not fair? That is not fair. You just do all sorts of negative things, be sinful. At the end, remember Krishna. Prabhupada, when initially he said yes, that is possible. Prabhupada gave example of Ajamil. Ajamil, he was very sinful, but at the end he remembered through his son Narayan, and he was liberated. But then Prabhupada said, when this second question came, that is not fair. Then Prabhupada said, yes, in the case of Ajamil, it's a rare examples, but in the case of example, it was again not the norm because he was a Brahmin before. So he had practiced the process of devotional service. But he, that period he stopped. But because of his earlier practice, he was able to remember the Lord. So therefore, it is not possible to be sinful throughout one's life and remember Krishna or the Supreme Lord at the end of one's life. Even if remembers the Supreme Lord intentionally, as Haridas Thakur explains while giving the importance of chanting Namabhas, even on the Namabhas stage, one even chants just like Haridas Thakur gives the example of Ha Ram. If somebody, even a Malecha, he gives in the text, if a low caste person being attacked by a boar, wild boar, while he's been attacked or being killed, he says, Ha Ram. Haram means, abominable, abominable. So Ha Ram, so Ram, he's chanting the name of Krishna, Ram. And that will be, and by which he'll attain liberation or his perfection. But let's assume, in the worst case scenario, a devotee who practicing Krishna consciousness all his or her life, somehow or the other doesn't attain the perfection. At the end of one's life, one doesn't go back to Godhead, but he ends up in the court of Yamaraj. But for a devotee, that is also even very big gain, because who's Yamaraj? He is one of the Mahajans. He is a pure devotee. So when in front of a Yamaraj, what devotee will discuss? About Krishna, about devotional service. And through that discussion and through that advancement in a discussion with Yamaraj, one will go back to Godhead. So there's no loss. But that's why a devotee is not scared of death. The biggest fear in this life is the process of dying, death and dying. But for a devotee who is practicing Krishna consciousness throughout his life, it's inevitable that devotee will remember the Lord at the end of his or her life. But that comes with practice, and we have to practice. Even though there may be so many impediments, we have to tolerate the impediments and keep practicing. And it is a practice is a key word here, and Lord Krishna will explain the importance of practicing in next few texts. And just we like to finish by repeating what Prabhupada has repeated twice in his purport. One should continue to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So that at the end of one's life, one can have the full benefit of Krishna consciousness. And that full benefit of Krishna consciousness is, we will go back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here. If there's any corrections, comments or questions, any discussion points we can have, we have a few minutes. Yes, Madhu.
I have a sort of personal question.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a mic there, isn't there? Yeah, can somebody pass the mic to her? Yes, Madhu.
You can tell me more about dying in Vrindavan. My husband died in Vrindavan about 15 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
But he was not really
Right. My understanding, anyone who dies not just in Vrindavan but in the Braj Mandal, that individual goes back to Godhead. That is my understanding. Or other I've heard also that the process of him going back to Godhead becomes open, and he quickly attains that the goal of going back to Godhead. But for a devotee who knows the purpose of life, he knows, who has been practicing Krishna consciousness, definitely, certainly, inevitably, the devotee will go back to Godhead just by passing away in Vrindavan. Even if one is not a devotee, then inevitably he will go back to Godhead, no doubt.
Even if it's not never chant Hare Krishna? Spent 4 years in Vrindavan.
Yeah, yes, I've heard to kind of one conclusion I've heard, yes, even if that individual has not chanted. And that's why the story I said, that rich man from Delhi, he wanted to leave his body in Vrindavan, but he could not. It's not easy to stay and leave one's body and stay in Vrindavan be born in Vrindavan and die in Vrindavan. And scriptures say that anyone who dies, I remember I'm reading, no, just Vrindavan, anyone who dies 20 kilometers or 20 miles, I don't know, 20 kilometers, 20 miles, either side of River Ganga, also attains liberation. Now, what kind of liberation? That's something else, that's a different definition. But anyone who dies in Braj, in Vrindavan, goes back to Godhead. And this Braj, the dimensions of Braj is quite large, 84 course. That's 168 square miles. That is a large area, huge area. Not just in Vrindavan. Center is Mathura. From Mathura, you take a circle all around, 135 kilometers. That's 270 square kilometers. So from Mathura, 135 kilometers each way, all round. That is the limit of Braj Mandal, which for us, for our relative knowledge, if we go to Delhi, it is almost close to Delhi. It's not just to Kotuvan or nearby. That is where the 84 course yatra begins. There's 3 circles of Braj. The outer circle, which goes almost up to Delhi. The inner circle, where the 84, the 84 course yatra takes place, which for a month. And there's a core circle, which is known as Sevakunj, or the Vrindavan area. Vrindavan extends from Vrindavan here all the way to Govardhan, where Lord Krishna performed most of his pastimes. That is the core of this Braj. So Braj is vast to not just this particular. So anyone who's dying, very fortunate, very ultimately, yes, definitely. Very well. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
If somebody, a person or a devotee,
One second.
He is living in who knows. If somebody is or some devotee, he is living in some other place, not in Ron, but is chanting and he remembers Krishna by chanting or remembering or means. What will be his position? Will he attend or not?
Yes, definitely. I mean, see, wherever devotees are and wherever this chanting is going on, wherever the temples are of ISKCON worldwide, each temple is Vrindavan. One can see, Vrindavan is not just physical place. It is physical place in which we are living. At the same time, is also a state of consciousness. What type of mentality, what type of consciousness we have. If we remember Lord Krishna, even if we're not in Vrindavan, but we attain that stage at the end of one's life of remembering Krishna, practicing devotional service outside Vrindavan, yes, we will attain the same goal. But it becomes difficult. If you, as I said earlier, if you're in Vrindavan, it becomes much easier. Much easier. Outside, if one is lucky in the midst of devotees who help you to help you to pass our final test. Because this final test, we all need help. And if devotees outside Vrindavan, in our association to devotees in the temple, we are practicing devotional service, and that if we're sincere, and Krishna will definitely help us to.
Actually, I'm we are Indian. If somebody wants to, at the time, last time, wants to come to Vrindavan, relatives bring here, it's okay. But foreign devotees, you cannot come to India.
Anyone.
But they can constantly remember.
Anyone, same thing. They will. Anyone, whether Indian or non-Indian, whether who are staying outside of Vrindavan, outside of India, even they're staying remotest part of North Antarctica. But if they remember Krishna, at the time of dying, they will attain Krishna. No doubt. Krishna says that, asamshaya, there's no doubt. He says, anyone who remembers me at the time of dying, that state, individual will attain, without any doubt. So yes, but we're talking about attaining that state of consciousness. How to attain that. And that comes through practice. Practicing this process throughout our life as, skirtanya sadahari, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. We should practice walking, sleeping, dreaming, eating, whatever we do, we'd have to remember, try to remember. I can speak for myself. I try to remember Krishna. So, and because our goal, all our goal is to pass the final test in life, and that's the biggest test we will face, and that is our goal. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Krishna Balaram ki jai, Radha Shyam Sundar ki jai, Gaur Nitai ki jai, Samaved Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.